This is the podcast you've been expecting, a dating toolbox to guide you through dating and relationships.
We are your hosts, the handsome mutant and the crazy Venezuelan girl. Stay tuned to laugh as we share our own experiences.
Welcome back, friend. Thank you for joining us again on this episode. Hopefully, if you've been with us through the first couple, you've already asked some people out on dates, you've already overcome your fears of dating, and you've thought about what you want and are looking for in a person. In this episode, we're going to be talking about keeping the momentum going from the first date. How do you continue to improve the relationship that you're starting to form? How do you become better friends with the person? And how do you go on a second date and continue to grow the relationship naturally? If you haven't seen those first episodes, go ahead and check it out. And with us today, we have our friend Gabe. Go ahead and say hi, Gabe.
I'm so excited to be here. I just want to say I'm honored to be here, and I love this podcast. Biggest fan ever.
Yeah. But tell us a little bit about yourself, Gabe, just a brief introduction.
So I am a friend of Lane and Allie's I was actually a friend of Lane's from high school. I was there at their first date when Lane, I don't know if we've talked about this in the previous podcast, Lane put together a Halloween party that didn't exist. And I was at that Halloween party, and it was a blast, and it's been really fun to watch that relationship blossom. And I guess about myself, I am 22 years old. I am studying at BYU, and I do not go on that many dates.
Well, thank you so much, Gabe. And we actually joined you on a date just the other day, so it might not be that much, but hopefully it continues to grow from here. I mean, you can't really blame yourself because it's the pandemic, so it's not your fault. We'll just say it's not your fault.
Yes, I'm glad the pandemic happened. It was very convenient. It was very convenient.
Covering up for your stagnant dating life. Amazing.
It's the best excuse I've ever had.
What do you think is the best way to keep the momentum going or to have a good post-first date experience?
Okay, so I actually have been thinking a lot about this because I was trying to go back to our second date and how we progress from first date, getting to know each other, and starting a relationship. Something that is super, super important that now that I look back to those experiences is that you have to remember that the first date is only a first date. Mm-hmm. You know, I feel like people have this tendency to jump into things quickly or go away from, mm-hmm. run away from things pretty quickly. Mm-hmm. We judge people too hard after a first date. So we usually don't want a second date right after. And that's how we kind of funnel people, But I think that's something that is super important is that you give that people the benefit of a doubt and let them have a second chance, You are not going to progress with anyone if you don't give someone a second chance, Every day has wonderful times and some embarrassing and funny and crazy times. So I think that's my first advice.
Yeah. After a first date, I think it's good to shoot somebody a text. I think that's the first step to making your relationship continue to grow. Because imagine even if you're just a guy, if you ask someone out on a date and then you never send that text after dropping them off from the date, that girl is going to wonder if you like them or not, And so I would say if you want to keep seeing them again, be aware of that post-date text. Something that you brought up earlier, Allie, that I think was amazing is you said that it shouldn't be a gender role. Like it shouldn't be up to the guy only to send that first date text. If you're a girl and you loved the first date and you want to see them again, you should tell them.
Okay, I absolutely love that comment. I think that's something that I was always afraid is that the guy was going to think I was too overbearing. You know what I mean?
Needy.
Or needy, yeah. I didn't want him to feel like I was too pushy. Do you guys think that that's a thing? Have you guys ever thought that if a girl makes the first step or takes the initiative to talk to you or text you after a first date, she's been too pushy?
So
Gabe has something good in this. He's already laughing.
He's laughing. Let's hear it, Gabe.
I'm having a good time. But I actually would think the opposite. For most guys, whether or not you had fun in the first date, the worst thing that could happen, well, I guess that you can overthink is if they don't text you after the first date. Mm-hmm. So whether they had a good time on the first date, the person you took out had a good time or not on the first date, it's if you don't get a text, you have no idea how they're feeling. And so I personally, not once have I ever not loved when someone's texted me after a first date, just hey, I had a great time. You don't even have to kind of preface it with hey, we should go out again, or we should, do something like that. But even if it's just a simple text, hey, it was an awesome time. Thanks so much for taking me out. I've loved that every single time. Not once have I ever thought that was like too
Over the
much
line.
over the line. Like, oh wow, this girl is so weird for wanting to text me after the first date.
Right? I mean,
I think it's all about communication, but I feel like it's just like you'll be able to tell if you guys can vibe, if you can hold a good conversation, if it's meaningful, if it's not just like routine. You guys can go on without your lives without having to think about what's on the other person's mind. It's like you're so comfortable with each other that like it doesn't matter like how the communication goes. It's just you're communicating, you care about each other, and that's just about it. It's simple, and it's not complicated. Like I remember what you mentioned on a previous episode. It's like if you're in a good relationship or if you're really with somebody, it shouldn't be a burden.
right.
And so if you actually like this person that you're going on a second, you want to take on a second date, it's just the communication will be clear. The relationship will be reciprocal. It'll with communication, and you'll be able to tell that they're into you, you're into them, and the actions will speak louder than their words.
Yeah. No, I agree. For me, the biggest thing that contributes to going from dating to actually being in a relationship, or even just going on more dates with the same person, is not overthinking and not playing the game. I think this goes into what you said about communication. Just being open and honest with people is the best way. But when I say don't play the game, what I mean is this game that we've all played where maybe it's after a first date or after a second date or whatever, you have an experience with somebody, and then in the morning or the next day, instead of texting them and just telling them how you felt about it, you just wait and you're like, okay, I'm going to wait to see if they text me, if I don't text them. It's like this text first thing. And I think a lot of people feel this anxiety about texting first because they think that if they text first, that they're going to be giving away too much, about their feelings. And the truth is you don't need to play that game, because think about it this way. If you text first and the other person likes you, then they're going to be happy that you texted first. And if you text first and the other person doesn't like you, you'll see that, over time, you'll kind of get the vibe that, okay, this person doesn't really like me. And, if you ask them on a date, like I said before, and they say no, that means that they're probably not interested. Or if they keep making excuses, then you know that they're not, interested. And so I would say don't play the game. Do what you want to do. If you're the guy and you want to text her first, text her first. If you want to text her in the morning, text her in the morning. And if you don't, then don't. If you're true to what your feelings are, and if you just do it the way that you want to do that, then you will know where they stand. And I think I mentioned this before to Gabe in another conversation, but when it comes to going from the first date to more dates, what happened with Allie and I is we went on our first date. She texted me. I kind of knew where we were at. And I asked her again out on Wednesday. So I gave us 3 or 4 days. I didn't wait too long. Went out on a date. And then from there, it wasn't every night, but it was pretty frequently, like maybe a couple of times a week. If she was doing nothing, I wanted to hang out with her. I wanted to see her. So I'd say, hey, what are you doing? She says nothing. I'm like, you want to watch a movie? You want to hang out? You want to get some ice cream? You want to come with me and my friends and do something? It can be casual. You can invite her to do something with you and your friends that isn't a date. You can go and do something together that isn't a formal date. And I think that is where building the momentum comes from, is just doing what you want to do. If you want to talk to them, then talk to them. If you want to hang out, then ask them to hang out. If you want to go on a date, ask them on a date. And if they don't want that, then you will see it in their actions. Like Gabe said, if they don't want to go out on a date, they'll say no, or they'll make excuses and they'll keep kind of avoiding it. Or they'll just tell you, hey, I'm super flattered that you keep wanting to talk to me and seeing me and hang out with me, but I'm just not feeling it, Go ahead.
So I think you bring up a really good point. And I feel like the game that you've been mentioning and you've been describing is like their first take of how manipulative you are.
Right.
I mean, like it's plain and simple. You're being very manipulative if you're trying to like kind of test the waters in that sense of like, oh, okay, I'm not going to text them because I want them to think that I am not interested, or
right.
I want them to feel the emotion of like me not showing them any attention.
Right.
I want them to, like analyze that. That's kind of, like manipulative. It really is in a sense. So the easiest way to avoid that is what Lane said. Just show them how you feel, and just like quit over analyzing things. And after everything you can possibly do, that's on them,
Yeah.
like do what you can do, but
Yeah.
anything past that is out of your control. So quit trying to like overanalyze
Exactly.
and think about it. So I actually have a question.
Go ahead.
For Allie. And Allie, if you didn't have a good time on the first date, what would you include in the text?
Okay, that's a great question, Gabe. There were some people that I actually like. I absolutely knew I would not want to see again. Yeah. And I would text something like, hey, I really had a good time with you. Unfortunately, I don't think that there's a lot of connection, or there's not lots of things in common that will, be good to continue to, see each other. I feel like I would be wasting your time. And I was really blunt with that, because I didn't want people to think that it was something that they did wrong.
Yeah.
It was just on my part. I wasn't interested in maybe what the personalities or things like that.
Yeah. This kind of ties into something that Gabe mentioned earlier about overthinking. We all do it after every date, whether it's the first date or not. Gabe, how has overthinking affected your dating life?
What is it not affected in my dating life? It's like the things that you don't know are the things that kill you,
Yeah.
Like if in a perfect relationship or in a perfect, dating setup, I feel like you're just communicating your feelings 100% of the time, but you don't know how the other person is going to react. You don't know how, if they're going to be repulsed by that, or if they kind of want that. But overthinking is the most dangerous thing, in my opinion, for trying to build momentum in a relationship, is because, especially after the first date, like the first date was just a first date,
Yeah.
like quit making it more than it was. I don't care like how great the first date was. This is my opinion, you can't like know whether someone's wife or husband material after the first date alone.
Right.
I actually have a funny experience about this. I went on a date with this guy, and after the date, I thought it went well, but I overanalyzed. I seriously went through the whole date.
Oh my goodness.
Trying to think what...
Gabe knows what that's like.
Oh, every date.
what I said. Did I say it correctly? Did I put my hand on his shoulder when I should have? All of these things. And the guy never texted me back.
Oh my goodness.
And I text him kind of like a follow-up thing, and he never texted me back. And I started overthinking even more what happened. And probably like a month later, the guy texted me back, and he was like, hey, I am really, really sorry. My parents live in Mexico, and I had to go back to Mexico for a family problem, and I'm just back, so I didn't have connection. And the whole time, I was just thinking, this guy is the worst. He didn't text me back.
And now you didn't even want to go out with him again.
That date just went super wrong. Because at first, I was thinking, oh, the date went so well. But because he didn't text me back, I just felt like so horrible. I thought about it.
Over and over.
Yes. And so don't overanalyze a date. A date is just, especially a first date. Yeah. It's just a first date. You will make mistakes. And that's probably a good thing. You show the person that you are human. And you're interested in them getting to know you in a more meaningful way.
Yeah.
I think that goes back to something that I was relating to this whole thing, and that is that it's so important that you actually think about after you go on a first date, and that's red flags. After a first date, you don't want to overanalyze the first date, but you kind of want to pick on some of the red flags, and think about if you really had a good time with the person. Did you have connection with the person? Would you go on a second date with them? Of course, not overthinking, you know, but just analyzing yourself and how you felt after a date, you know?
I just have actually a quick question about this.
Okay.
So we mentioned red flags in the first date. And so what would stop you from wanting a second date with a girl? So what exactly do we mean when we reference red flags? I'll start with one that I know for a fact. From an experience of a friend of mine, he called me after a first date, and I was like, yeah, how'd the date go? He's like, yeah, it was really good. She was super sweet. They had an amazing time. But for some reason, during the first date, they started talking about families and how their future families. And he's like, dude, she wants 10 kids. And he's like,
whoa.
And he's like, that's a red flag. I mean, that'd probably be a red flag for me too. But I mean, that's just, personally, some people do want 10 kids, but I mean, I don't know. I guess red flags they have to be that severe, if in order to not give someone a second chance. But what are examples, of things or times that you've been on a first date that's just okay, never, no way
Yeah.
Like that's probably not a good idea.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I think that the term red flag sometimes gets too loose of a definition. We just think if there's anything that isn't what we think we like, that it's automatically a red flag. And that's not really the case, you know. There's things that we can tolerate, and then there's red flags.
I think that something that would be a red flag for me is if my date was rude or inappropriate. Absolutely. I do not tolerate, I used to not tolerate that.
Thankfully.
I went on a date with this guy, and he was just so mean to everyone around me.
Oh.
And so I just thought, you're nice to me because you're on a date with me.
But what happens when we're living together?
Absolutely. You know what I mean? And I also went on a date with a guy, and I think I talked about this in other episodes, but he was so inappropriate. He started talking about sex and stuff, and I just feel so uncomfortable. And so I think that if I feel uncomfortable in the date,
it's a red flag.
It's a red flag.
Yeah. There's nothing wrong. You know yourself, and you know what you can handle and what you can't handle.
Trust your instincts.
Maybe we can ask you about some of your experiences after this, but I think the thing that worries me the most, or that did worry me the most after first dates, is like how often should I text this person? How often should I suggest hanging out? How often should I ask them on dates? Because you've just been on one date, and you kind of have this thing in your mind where it's like, I can't ask them on a date every single day, because then it's like, it's a little bit too much, you know, because you might feel like you're ready for that, but they might not feel ready for that. What do you think is a good way to kind of test the waters and gauge, you know, how much you should be putting in?
I think that, okay, there are two things I want to say about this. If you are interested in the person, make time for the person. Mm-hmm. If they are engaging with you, if you are sending them texts and they are replying back and that communication is going, then they are interested in you and they are interested in taking the time to talk to you. Mm-hmm. And so ask the person on a second date soon after the first date.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that you did. Mm-hmm. We went on a first date on Friday night. There you go. And then you asked me on Sunday to go on a date for that next coming Wednesday. Mm-hmm. Yes. And I thought that was so nice. I felt like, oh, he wants to see me more. And after that, we just kept hanging out, and we call it dating after a couple months into it, you know, already hanging out and going on dates. But I remember we didn't actually call those times that we went out dates.
Yeah.
Sometimes we did, but most of the time we were just like, oh, we have like a casual friends reunion.
Yeah.
And so we just try to like make sure that we were involving the person in our lives gradually.
Right.
So yeah, text a person continually after that text, after the first date. Mm-hmm. But also involve them in activities that you usually do if you want to continue to see the person. Yeah. If you don't lead them on. And then the other thing I was going to say that I think it's super funny that people do is that sometimes people start calling people over the phone. Mm-hmm. And I don't know. I personally don't think it's a good idea. If you want to involve that person in your life, you can absolutely do it over text and
FaceTime.
That's up. Yeah.
Skype me right now.
She actually told me about this guy who, like, after their first date, every single day he was like asking her to FaceTime, asking her to call.
Oh my goodness, yes. It was like every hour he would be like, are you busy? And I was like, kind of are. I'm at work. I work 8 hours, go to school full time. Yeah. And he just wanted to keep Skyping. And I felt comfortable, you know. I thought it was weird. Yeah. So you want to make sure that you are understanding what the other person pace and feelings are. Everyone has their own pace. And that is the hard thing about relationships, is that it is so weird how you two have to connect while you two have your own personalities and own pace.
Yeah.
And so my suggestion is, you know, make sure that you're both communicating well to kind of know where you're at in the relationship. Of course, you're not going to be after the second date like, what are we? You know, where are we at?
What is this?
What is this? Are we official?
¿Qué es eso?
¿Qué es esto? But yeah, you know, have some, you know, check up marks, or I don't know.
No, like so this is something that we didn't do until we were officially dating, but like every couple of weeks we would ask each other at different points like, how do you think our relationship is going? Like, do you think that we're going to keep seeing each other? Like sometimes we would say that, and this wasn't like the first week after our first date, but like maybe a month in, we were just kind of like, oh, how do you feel about the way things are going? And that's a good opportunity for you guys to kind of open up and say, like, I'm having fun, like I like this time we spend together. Maybe it will continue to grow, those kinds of things. I mean, don't ask if you feel like it's okay to ask. If you feel awkward about it, maybe don't. But it's something that helped us grow our relationship naturally, was to kind of gauge how we were both doing, I think that's a super good point. Something that I want to ask is, how does social media and your interaction with people, say on like Instagram or Twitter or Facebook, factor in to this post-date kind of situation that you find yourself in? Like, what do you think, Gabe? How do you effectively use social media, and how do you not effectively use social media after your first date?
So, for me personally, if I'm going to give advice for social media after the first date, it's just, if you're going to go on their social media, sure, whatever, it's kind of normal to kind of just like want to know more about the person, but leave no indication that you were there, Like, I remember after I had a first date with a girl, and it was like, so we ended the date at like 12:30 at night. So I'm done driving home, about ready to go to bed, just checking my Instagram. She liked a photo from like 2018 on
my God.
I was like, and of course she like unliked it, but I was like, now I have that indication.
She had that accidental double tap.
It was accidental double tap, the horrific accidental double tap. But yeah, it's just like you can just imagine like the thoughts that are going. Well, first of all, they probably hated, like they were probably freaking out, like
overthinking like,
oh shit.
Oh, we all do it.
Oh, absolutely. I would be lying to say that I haven't accidentally double tapped someone's photo.
From 2018?
From 2015.
Oh my god.
Just kidding. No, okay. Not that far maybe, but yeah, social media, it's kind of like, some people like, oh, you're not giving an indication of, oh, they'll know that I was thinking of them if I like their photo from when they were at prom in high school, right. It's just, if you're going to do it, just leave no trace, in the least creepy way possible. Just like, you fine, it's normal, but like, don't indicate that you were doing that. That's creepy.
Well, I think something that we kind of talked a little bit, we did a pre-game pep talk before the episode, and something that we mentioned is that it's just kind of weird if you're not even in bed yet after the first date, it's like 5 minutes after they dropped you off, and they're already following you on all the social media platforms, because it's kind of this indication that like they've just dropped you off and they're already thinking about how they can like contact you at every point, of your life, and I think what Gabe said is correct. Like, if you want to, look at some of their pictures after the date and just kind of analyze the date and stuff, that's fine. But if you're planning on following them, this is something that Ali actually mentioned, is while you're on that first date, just like show them some pictures from your Instagram or whatever, and then just like ask them if they have one and be like, okay, I'm going to follow you. Because it's way less awkward to tell them that you want to follow them during the date, and just do it, than it is to like wait until like, 5 minutes after the date and then follow them. I don't know.
Yeah, I think you guys are so right. I think that suddenly adding people after the date is just not a good way to go. I think that, like you mentioned before, something that I used to do is I would show people a picture and be like, oh, I just like add you because I already have my phone here, play it casual, Right. And then you can go home and stalk them, because honestly, we all do it. And that's a good thing. Don't feel bad about it, because you want to get to know that person more, and social media is a great way to get to know that person. Of course, people put their best face to social media, but I think they are also a lot more real about who they want to be and what they want to do with their lives in social media. So
you want to say something, Gabe?
Yeah, can I actually? I just have like a funny story about like, so just the reason that it's kind of important to kind of, or hopefully like prior to the first date, or like, yeah, of course, during the first date, you have that person's social media. And so an experience I had like prior to the first date, like I had a coworker and she was just like, oh, so beautiful. And I just wanted to ask her out. And I was like, all right, so I'm going to, like, I don't know anything about her. I don't have any connection to her. And so to kind of like gauge if I did, I just looked up her name on Facebook. That's creepy. I'm sorry. Okay. Get over it. But like,
Sorry, not sorry.
looked up her name on Facebook. First picture. Guess what her profile picture is?
Her with her boyfriend?
Her with her girlfriend.
Oh, wow.
Oh my. Okay, no.
And then at that moment, you knew that there was no chance.
There's double no chance. I'll tell you that much. But yeah, anyways, that's just an indication of like, okay, yeah, at least you know a little bit about the person. Don't get creepy with it. Don't be like, I need to know where they graduated high school and like stuff like that.
But you can also, in social media, you can find people that might be related to the two of you. Like, what's it called? Like mutual friends or
Mutual
something like that.
friends,
And that might be fun.
That's how we actually got this date that we just went on.
Oh.
Yeah, so one of my best friends from the mission, his wife knew the girl that I took out on a date.
Okay.
And so that's how we kind of connected. I noticed that they were following each other. So it's like, yeah, that's perfect. Like finding mutual friends, that's a good way to
Go finding.
exactly. And that's like what you can talk about. Oh, how do you know this person? Oh, okay, yeah. Stuff like that.
Something about social media that I also think it's so funny is how people sometimes, after they're kind of talking maybe like 1 or 2 dates, and they want to comment on like all your pictures, oh, you're so hot. And I'm like, I didn't think that we had that kind of connection and relationship. You know what I mean? Like, you kind of have to be aware of how the other person might feel if you post something like that. And this is a funny story, but I went on a date with this guy and he posted a picture of us on our first date. And I feel so uncomfortable. So don't post any pictures of the person you're with on the very first date, because it might not work out. And you don't want to have that memory in your Instagram for everyone to go back and say, oh, you actually did not.
Imagine every like October 12th, it's like Facebook memories pops up. It's like, you on this day a year ago you were with this person, and you're like, that didn't work out. Like,
And also on the other side of it, it's like you draw the assumption if you see two people even if it's just like a first date, they could barely know each other. But what we see when we see two people, kind of like going on a date, we just assume that they're together or they're like progressing in the date. It's just the first date. So exactly, you probably shouldn't be posting.
to set yourself up for success and to not be, creepy, just avoid posting pictures from the first date, because nobody out there cares. No one on your social media cares if you went on a first date. And if you want to play it safe, it's best not to make that person feel uncomfortable by posting it. Just you'll know when the right time is to post something.
What do you guys think are good ways to use social media to keep the post first date momentum going?
First to second. We'll focus on like first date to second date.
There you go.
I think, between the first and second date, I think something that I have done in the past after a first date is, if I didn't, for example, you, Allie, I did not follow you right after the first date. It took me a couple days or a couple dates before I followed you. But once I followed you, every once in a while when you'd post something, I would comment and be like, oh, like, where was that? Or that looks super fun. Or we should do that sometime too. Things like that. And I think that's way better than, like you said, just saying like, wow, you're so hot. Like every time someone posts something, I feel like if you're trying to be genuine, that's not the way to go. But if you had a great time and you guys are still talking, give it a couple days, follow each other on social media. And then good interaction is just being genuine about what you see. You don't have to comment on everything. You don't have to like everything, but like the things that you like and comment on the things that you want to say something about. And you can use it as another way to contact them throughout the week to kind of keep that that momentum going, like Ali said.
But there's not communication. So don't get that mixed up. Because I feel like some people are just like, oh, I like their picture, so that means, counts for a whole conversation today.
No, it does
that
not.
Is not true.
And I think that's a really good point. We talked about texting someone after the first date to tell them how you felt and if you had a good time and if you want to see them again. Liking somebody's picture is not a way of telling them that you're interested in them. Like that, you can assume that, but it's so vague, like it could mean anything, so don't take it as their communication and don't give that as your communication. Like if you want to say something, say it with your words. If I send someone a post or a text or something after the date and they're not responding, if I'm interested in them, obviously I'm going to think, man, did I send or say something that they didn't like and now they're not responding? But this happened a lot when Allie and I first started dating because we were both really busy, but she was more busy than I was. We're working full time, schooling full time. And so I'm the kind of person who will respond immediately to a text. It doesn't matter who it is. It could be my mom.
I am not. I'm sorry.
Exactly.
If you guys are listening to this, you probably know what Lane is talking about.
And so, like, I would send her a text, and then she would not respond until like 6 hours, 8 hours, 12 hours later. And then at first, when I first started talking to her, I wasn't used to this, and I thought that it meant she was not interested. But what I realized is that she always had a valid excuse. She's like, oh, sorry, I was working. Sorry, I was doing homework. Sorry, I was with my parents. And what I learned, because I was a really, really bad overthinker before we started dating, and what I learned from this is to just believe the person. You know, they'll speak with their actions. A lot of people speak with their actions louder than they speak with their words. You know, people who make excuses about where they're going and they're not interested in you, they won't see you if you ask them out. But if they are interested in you, and this was the case with Allie and I, if I would text her and she didn't respond, she'd make an excuse about being somewhere. But then if I asked her if she wanted to hang out or do something, she would say yes. And so this is how I kind of knew that she's speaking with her actions, that she does want to see me and she wants to interact with me. And I just was like, okay, it's going to do me emotional good if I just believe her that she's at work when she says she's at work. And it's like, her life isn't really my business. You know, when you've just started seeing someone, you don't really control.
Now it is.
I know now it is. But when you first start seeing someone, you have to realize that they might not feel the same way that you do. They might not be investing as much effort and emotion into something that you are. And so don't use, you know, their life as an excuse to overthink, you know, this new relationship that's starting to grow. I know. What do you think about that kind of overthinking and interacting with people consistently, Gabe?
So I actually will have a question for you, Lane, regarding this, because of course I am here for the advice.
He looks up to Lane.
Lane is my role model. I have a poster of Lane right in my room, and I say, one day I'll be like that. Anyway, before I forget what I was going to say, yeah, I guess to go back to your question is less is probably more.
Yeah.
Like I actually love it when we can just go about our day not having to communicate all the time. Mm-hmm. You know, it's just like, hey, I have school up until like 6:45. So if you don't get a response from me for the next like 8 hours, hey, just know that I care still, you know?
Yeah.
Less is more. But my question is to you, Lane, is how do I know, like say this becomes consistent and they're just like, oh, hey, sorry. Because I remember I was kind of seeing this girl and she would only text me past like 11 p.m.
Okay.
Which is weird. It was like the same time every day. And so I was like, oh, she's probably busy or something like that.
Yeah.
But like at what point do you have to say like, oh, it's probably because she's not interested? Because I'm pretty sure a lot of girls, their indication of they're not interested is sometimes to not reply, is sometimes to just say like, oh, not to talk throughout the day. How do you find that difference between the two of like she's not interested?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think a lot of guys go through this, and I guess girls too. But I'm going to go back to my experience with Allie because there was a time, probably 2 weeks into us seeing each other, that I thought she wasn't interested because, you know, I would not hear from her all day. Like I would text her maybe like 11 in the morning, you know, 12 or something around lunchtime, and then I wouldn't hear from her until like 7, 8, 9, 10 at night. You know, it's been like 10 hours with no response. And I think it kind of goes to what I mentioned earlier, that people will speak with their actions. So if I was dating a girl or had seen a girl, right, post first date, and I text her and she does not text until 11, you know, every day, what I would do is I would ask her out for like the next couple of days. So I'd ask her out for like maybe 2 days from now. And if she says yes, then I know that she's, you know, interested. And if she actually comes, that's the other thing. If she cancels or if she says no, then it probably means she's not interested. And this advice actually comes from my dad. He was kind of doing like a 3 strikes rule, you know, kind of like baseball. If he asked out a girl for the first date and she said no, or if she made an excuse, then he would ask her out a second time. If she made an excuse the second time, he would ask her out a third time. And if she made an excuse the third time, then he would just take that as she's not interested, you know, because there's no way that somebody can have an excuse for 3 different times asking someone out without either agreeing to one of them or setting up a counter proposal. You know what I mean? Like if I ask out a girl on the second date and she makes another excuse, but then says, "Oh, I can't that night, but we can go on this other day because I'm not busy that day," then you know that she's actually interested in at least seeing you. But if she makes excuses and doesn't offer like a counter offer, a counter proposal, or anything like that, then she's probably just dodging. And then, I mean, don't overthink it. Just chalk it up to she's busy and she doesn't want to see me right now, and just move on and find another person to ask out, honestly, you know.
I think that, I know you asked Lane about this
No,
question,
you
but,
were more than welcome to answer this question.
but I think that something that I would suggest is communicating that to her, communicating how you feel, because that's part of, if things are going to progress, then you want to start communicating well, even if it's for a short amount of time. You still want to make sure that you guys are communicating well enough. So if you feel that way, if you feel like I don't know where you're at, you should communicate that.
Yeah.
You should say something, just something simple like, "Hey, I've been thinking about like where we're at," like, or like if you don't feel comfortable saying exactly those words, just say something like, "Hey, like I don't know if you're like interested in still keeping in touch and talking. If you're not, I wouldn't get offended."
Yeah.
You know, make the other person feel like it's a safe place for them to say yes or no.
Yeah.
And I think that most people would be honest and tell you.
Thanks so much again for joining us, Gabe. You had some really good input.
This is the best day of my life.
I can see it in your eyes. It is the best day of your life. And who knows, maybe we'll have Gabe on another time. But yeah, thank you so much again for joining us. And thank you, friend, for listening in on this episode. Hopefully you've learned a little bit about the momentum of dating. How do you continue to build the relationship naturally? And these next couple episodes are going to go a little bit more in depth on how you grow the relationship naturally and go from just like one date and hanging out to multiple dates to pre-relationship and then like defining the relationship. So that's kind of like a roadmap for the next couple episodes we're going to be going into. Everyone, feel free to send us a story that you have about a first date, how it went, a relationship that developed over time naturally, and what you think the best way to develop a relationship is. You can follow us on Instagram at The Nightings. That's TheGneiting. And if you would like us to send us an email with a story or a question that we might address in another episode, you can send us an email at theyoungcouple20@gmail.com. Again, thank you so much for joining us. And if you haven't seen our previous episodes, check it out. Tell your friends. We're trying to grow the movement. Always remember to grow and love, and we'll see you in the next episode.